Marvel's Spider-Man 2 was an unbalanced masterpiece. For the many ups, there are some downs. For all the left turns the game takes, up ahead there's an odd right. Spider-Man 2 is a fantastic game that is held back by some quirks ranging from small nitpicks to glaring issues. As such, an unbalanced game deserves an unbalanced review. At least that's what I think this video will end up being, especially since there's two of us talking about it.
Before we go on, thank you, Insomniac. Listen, making games is hard, especially AAA games about Spider-Man. To knock it out of the park as hard as they did in the first game, and to do it all over again with two Spider-Men, having it be a technical showcase of the PlayStation 5, as well as developing during a worldwide pandemic, the odds were stacked up against them, against everyone. But they succeeded. Spider-Man 2 is in our hands, and we played it from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you, Insomniac.
First off, the de facto best thing about Spider-Man 2 is Traversal. This game is a technical showcase for the PlayStation 5. Being able to move through this densely packed map at high speeds with minimal pop-in is a level of technical wizardry I still cannot comprehend. It's not every day you can see a developer just accidentally made a Superman game, but here we are, I guess. And it's with a Spider-Man game of all things. A marvel, if you will. Additions like the loop-de-loop, corner tethering, not being locked to just running on walls, being able to web launch anywhere, the fucking web wings, oh my god, and the updated swinging animations for both Peter and Miles sets this game above all the other Spider-Man games in terms of just moving around the city. Speaking of, not only has Manhattan received some updates,
Baxter Building! Yeah!
But the addition of Queens and Brooklyn, separated by the Hudson River, is simply incredible. The first time I crossed towards the different islands, my mouth was agape. Just watching the footage is not enough. You just have to experience the speed and distance you can reach going from the financial district to Astoria with just the web wings, especially when using the wind tunnels. I do agree it would be nice to turn off the rings around them, but just going into a tunnel, gaining insane speed, and then moving out of them while carrying this momentum is so much fun, I forgot the rings were even there. It's equally impressive that no matter what performance mode you choose, there's ray tracing, a testament to Insomniac's understanding of how the PlayStation 5 works. Fast travel allowing you to instantly go to any point on the map is cool, but with how fast you can go and the heights you can reach, I honestly didn't feel the need to use it compared to the first game. I do miss the transition cutscenes of Peter and Miles in the subway, but I can accept the sacrifice. I recommend turning the swinging assistance setting down to 0 or 1. Being able to swing as close to the ground as possible and not worrying about some strange invisible floor is perfect for immersion, and a personal challenge that's rewarding with how cool it looks. Fall damage you can take or leave, but I will admit it is hilarious when you fail a loop-de-loop and Spider-Man just splats on the ground. Moving around the city is thrilling, especially when you update the settings, and I just can't wait to get back. Yeah, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back. It was so much fun.
Yash? We still have to, okay then. Well, anyway, the additions of the parry, along with multiple new skills, such as the bounce up, the web whip, and the web yank, plus its slam variant, evolves the combat of Spider-Man 2 compared to the other two games with fantastic animations and even more bombastic finishers. Although, this all makes the assumption that the Spider-Men aren't killing anyone. Harder to believe. While there are many additions to the fist-to-face combat, the gadgets got a major reduction from the 7 in Spider-Man 1 to just 4. That's not me saying it's a bad thing. The tools this time around are actually pretty intuitive and useful. The web grabber is great for crowd control and setting up AoE attacks, the upshot is a more plausible suspension matrix, the ricochet is the love child of the web bomb and impact web, and the concussion blast is... I mean, that's alright, it doesn't outright suck. Aside from those, the new abilities for Peter and Miles do a nice job in leveling the playing field. Miles' bioelectricity abilities function the same way as they did previously, but the new evolved Venom abilities are pretty good at being a ranged version of the basic Venom attacks. Peter's spider arm abilities and the later Symbiote abilities are just more brutal versions of Miles' attacks, but more than previous games, the combat puts an emphasis on attacking enemies in groups. In response, enemies are now slightly more aggressive than they were in the previous games. Some enemies have attacks that can only be parried, and some enemies outright have to be avoided. It sort of increases the multitasking you have to do. You gotta take out out this enemy, but you also have to group these guys together to bust out the big moves, but you also have to watch out for the enemies that have the super attacks. It's a lot of stuff you have to keep track of, and in the early game, you're going to feel very overwhelmed if you don't adapt in time, especially towards the end. In that regard, Spider-Man 2 is definitely harder than Spider-Man 1, but in our playthrough, we were somewhat able to pick up the pace. Not a deal breaker, just a bone breaker. Another area that has gotten some improvements are the side quests. For instance, the Emily May Foundation side missions are a less annoying version of the research lab missions from Spider-Man 1, where once you start one, there's an 80% chance the city is on the verge of collapse because there's no recycling or something. As for their related minigames, the Robo-Bees, the plant puzzles, and the chemical analysis didn't overstay their welcome and were bite-sized brain teasers. I had a chuckle with the electric bicycle mission. The Mysterium arenas were also a short and sweet collection of gauntlets that test your skills with Miles' combat. The real highlight of this questline, however, goes through the surprisingly gripping story about trying to continue on with your life after prison. The final boss is also a huge treat for Mysterio fans, and the suit you unlock for Miles afterward is low-key the best suit in the game.
False! False prophet!
Shut up!
False!
Shut up!
False!
I do wish we got to play these arenas as Peter, and it's odd giving Miles a Peter-centric villain, but the challenges and the glimpses of what this universe's Mysterio looks like made up for them. While the EMF and the Mysteriums were pleasant distractions, the Cultural Museum questline reminded me of the best parts of Spider-Man Miles Morales. I really enjoyed this set of missions. I felt like I was learning about the history of music and felt how important the preservation of this side of history is. It also avoids the pitfall of making this Miles more art-oriented just to evoke his Spider-Verse counterpart, and elevates the feeling of being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. By far, the best part about the ending was walking in the museum and getting the Sound City suit. It's just so cool, and something I didn't know I needed until it was given to me. Anyway, I'll let Yash take over this. Oh yeah, I forgot about the photo ops. They're good. No comment.
The Wraith side missions with the Flame Cold was surprisingly interesting. Yuri's new outfit is nice and her weapon is cool, especially in takedowns. This being a sneaky Cletus Cassidy and Carnage setup was a genuine surprise. Look, as long as he's a crazy serial killer, I don't mind what you do with him, and this new angle with him being a leader of the cult is interesting, and I can't wait for either a future DLC or sequel game to dive more into his story. The story itself is alright, and I'm glad it didn't end with Yuri deciding not to kill anymore, despite her never actually killing anyone in the game as far as I'm aware. These types of stories can range from being in-depth to as shallow as a puddle, and this was more of the latter unfortunately, but still an overall good time. Being completely honest, I thought the Brooklyn Vision side stories would matter way more than they actually did. Miles being labeled the official mascot of his own school, I assumed would lead into missions where we explore more of how BV works, what the culture is like, partaking in some club activities, and maybe stop a crime or two. But these ended up being relatively harmless and quick. The homecoming mission was pretty cute. Shut up! The AV Club mission wasn't bad, it was just okay. The standout mission here is the one where you have to find the mascot Midtown High stole. Haley being involved in the puzzles with the mirrors and how they were integrated into the city was something I liked a lot. The reward being this suit was nice. That's a theme you'll be noticing. The side missions in this game usually unlock a suit that is themed after said missions. Neat reward, especially since these missions aren't that complicated. Honestly, the Chameleon side quest is fine. I'm just shocked they bothered to do anything with this guy. The drones producing these wind tunnels and having to dodge incoming debris or taking down other drones was cool. Again, just showing off the power of the PlayStation 5 with a gimmick each mission. I want to quickly shout out Chameleon's actual apartment. Walking in and seeing all the masks he wears, as well as a bit of history regarding the two brothers, nothing too deep, but the vibes were immaculate. The symbiote nest I'm 50-50 on, mostly for story reasons as we will explain later. Going full web of shadows, having to fight back against hordes of enemies, and protecting the areas until the timer runs out. These, especially on the hardest difficulty, truly test your reaction time and how you use your abilities for crowd control. Genuinely hard and don't overstay their welcome. It's also cool how they look on the world map. Side missions sometimes have more of an effect on the overworld map, these being the standout. These large spirals of symbiote are haunting, and how they affect the overall environment make you actually want to destroy them. Shout out to the art design, creepy and unsettling in the best way.
Street crime works similarly to how it did in the other games. They pop up in the world, you show up, crush skulls, break limbs, make more widows and orphans, and leave just as fast as you arrived. Standard Spider-Man stuff. There are more varied types of crime, like the cultists, the hunters, and more. Some crimes don't end after beating everyone up, and you have to take a civilian to an ambulance. It really makes you feel like Spider-Man. What's more, sometimes you get to partner up with another character, whether that be the other Spider-Man, Wraith, or Agent Venn Diagram. You can even interact with them afterwards for nice teamwork energy. They're doing the point! They're doing the thing! They're doing the thing! They're doing the thing! They're doing the thing! I do have 2 complaints. I would have loved the car chases to be more involved. Some of the hunter chases are a little more complex, but the basic ones just end in a single QTE. Feels like Insomniac overcorrected on the length of these types of crimes. Also, you can't generate crime from the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app like you can in Miles Morales, and that kinda sucks because it makes you wait for them to spawn in, so you have to figure out what to do.
Where the fuck are the boat crimes? Like, you have this whole ass river between the islands and you don't create crimes that can happen on boats? We did this in 2004! What is going on? Collecting all the Spider-Verse spider bots was neat, but the disappointing payoff I don't blame Insomniac for. It's no secret that the production of Across the Spider-Verse was chaotic and rife with insane deadlines and cuts up until the last minute. And as a result, this character, Delilah, was cut from the movie, making this ending a bit awkward for the expectation set. Overall fun, albeit a tad anticlimactic due to outside circumstances. The Kraven Hunter bases are a significant improvement over the Demon bases in Spider-Man 1. Each base having different obstacles and objectives to complete with different ways of accomplishing them were exactly what the first game needed. The story regarding Kraven's family too was pretty interesting, especially the twist when Kraven killed everyone. Hype's Kraven up a ton, but being honest, the suit is just okay. I mean, it's fine. The Prowler stashes were fine, but the highlight here is the story with Uncle Aaron and Miles. I'm really happy they didn't go the route of making Prowler a bad guy again, and instead stick to their guns with him changing for the better. The reward being a buffed camouflage hit, while nice, I rarely recall tipping the scales of a battle.
What's not just okay are the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man missions. These guys are in the hospital for back injuries from carrying the shit out of the overall side mission quality, and, dare I say, Spider-Man 2's story overall. From sitting down with an old man as he reminisces on his long-lost love, to playing the perspective of Haley and hearing the world how she hears it, to the wholesome and hilarious flashback to Peter's first meeting with Jonah, the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man missions aren't just side missions, and I never not enjoyed a single one. Shout out to Seabrith, by the way, great song.
You should have made me, goddammit!
It was you play that mission.
No.
The side missions overall are a step above the last game. Insomniac learned a lot from Miles Morales, and the content is both satisfying and, most importantly, fun. I do wish we had traversal and combat challenges, but that's a nitpick at best. However, as we will explain when talking about the story, these missions, especially the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man missions, highlight some of our issues regarding the actual main story of Spider-Man 2. For a story that's about balance, it's anything but. We'll get to why we feel like that later, but for now, let's start with the beginning of the story. After an eerie opening with Harry, we start the story proper with Peter's first and last day of being a teacher, as Sandman wrecks Manhattan Island, having escaped the vial apparently, off screen. He's just trapped. That's kidnapping, Pete. This opening sequence with both Spider-Men is both a showcase of what Insomniac can get away with on the PlayStation 5, having an uninterrupted sequence of Miles getting blasted across Manhattan, and how Peter and Miles work together, now that both of them are officially the dynamic duo that Gotham needs, French Kamehameha included. A much bigger intro compared to the Fisk Tower raid. The aftermath, helping with damages and lootings after the fight, was a smart way to continue the tutorial, and the last mission rescuing Jonah is the cherry on top. However, how are they able to fit 3D printers inside their web shooters? I accepted all the science mumbo-jumbo from the previous 2 games, but this is a little ridiculous. You could have just had it be a spider bot, or like another gadget, or like just don't. The main theme of the story is about balance, so having the character start off being unbalanced was perfect. Peter can't keep a job and is about to lose May's house because he has to be Spider-Man. Miles is stuck with his college essay because both being Spider-Man and Martin Lee's escape is throwing him off his game. And MJ is trying to keep her job, coming off the back of a failed book launch, and Jonah's hectic meritocracy clashing with her desire for the truth. All of that is great and compelling, especially the stuff with Harry, being trapped in a tube for 2 years and starting the Emily May Foundation to heal the world with Peter, like his mother wanted. Bonus is Norman Osborn actually loving his son and wanting him to survive. In adaptations, Norman is callous towards his son and more caring towards Peter, so this change is welcomed. We have to talk about Kraven though. Jim Peary's vocal performance and motion capture give Kraven a sense of formality, contrasting with his threatening aura. I will say, giving him a hunter army is a bit weird because I always saw Kraven as someone who handles things on his own, and building up the threat of Kraven by having him off most of the villains feels like the story is taking a step too far to hype him up. Returning villains like Tombstone and Black Cat were once again characterized really well for their brief appearance. The mission with Miles and Black Cat was both a giant reference to Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Doctor Strange. And that's all well and good, but it's really funny how we only get a thank you letter from Wong.
All the Coney Island stuff is great. The Mysterium rhythm game tricked me out and gave me Yakuza PTSD, and all the interactions with the activities are perfect side content, where you don't have to do it, but can if you want to spend more time with the characters. Having Tombstone be somewhat redeemed and that playing into the plot of Kraven kidnapping the villains works. And the reveal of Harry having the symbiote, I expected as much, so it wasn't a complete surprise, was peak Spider-Man. The dynamic with Harry and Peter both being superheroes was something I wish the game did more of, to be honest. Harry's superhero outfit being Agent Venom was when I gave up with Insomniac and just started the roll with whatever they were doing with the symbiote storyline. Something that got harder and harder to keep up with as the story went along. The new MJ missions are a step up from the previous game. The approach to turn them into a third-person quasi-stealth action game is way more enjoyable. Not immediately failing after getting detected was sorely needed, although I don't think this MJ should have been restricted to just the taser. I would rather just use the hunter's weapons against them. Overall, she still kind of suffers from the same problem where it's low slain, but not, but it is, but it's not. But overall, at least the gameplay missions, I'm able to stomach it somewhat better. Anyways, now that Peter has the symbiote, we can talk about the other half of the story.
If you don't believe that the Black Suit Saga is one of the most defining moments of Spider-Man's history, then you're not a Spider-Man fan. I'm sorry, it's just true. While the comics may have introduced the original Black Suit, John Sepper Jr.'s Spider-Man 90s show shot the symbiote into the stratosphere and gave us the almost definitive interpretation of the Black Suit Saga going forward. Ever since, subsequent adaptations have always taken stats at adapting the symbiote story so much that it's kind of expected a Spider-Man story will have a symbiote story at some point. It's almost like a canon event!
So when Insomniac said they were doing it, some expectations were created. Peter would get the symbiote, he would get angry, and all of this would lead to Venom, etc. etc. All of this was expected and all of this was met. Props to Yuri Lowenthal for having so much fun with being a bitter, angry Parker. The gameplay of the symbiote is intoxicating and all the horror stuff they do later in the game with it is sick. I especially want to highlight the chase sequence with Peter and MJ, where the GOAT Tony Todd takes over for a second and is the voice of Venom moving forward. While we're on the subject of voice actors, this game has solidified in my mind that Najee Jeter is the Miles I hear in my head when reading the comics. His performance has only improved over time, and I'm so glad they did not give him the squeaky voice he had before. But next game, please just let him use his normal voice. The sequences of Miles and Lee fighting, the Kraven fight, and the Peter versus Miles fight is insane. These boss battles in this game are an instant step up, actually feeling like battles I have to pay attention to, as opposed to just having it be like a normal combat encounter. The lizard fight going from the sewers to the streets back to the sewers was quick and delightful. Making him a giant dinosaur was a good call, at least in my opinion. After Peter takes off the suit, when we go to Oscorp, the dial turns to 11 as finally, after all the teasing and anticipation, Harry becomes Venom. Now, if you loved the story of Spider-Man 2 after this point, good for you! We don't.
Please hear us out. Hear us out. Stop. Please stop. Stop, please. Well, it's more accurate to say we liked the story of Spider-Man 2 up until this point. The Venom level was absolutely a surprise for us. We genuinely didn't think they'd actually let us play as the big dude for a while, and his gameplay was quality over quantity in the best possible way. However, after a sick as hell final boss fight with Kraven, and the subsequent taking the stage as the main villain, the third act of Spider-Man 2 is where the game's story decides to sort of torpedo itself towards the end. Because once Venom shows up, things start to get a little rocky. Don't get us wrong, it's not that everything the third act does with Marvel's invasion of the Body Snatchers is bad. The idea of Harry using the symbiote to heal the world by infecting everything and creating creepy symbiote spawns evokes the iconic aesthetic of Web of Shadows, and the new finishers of having Spider-Man yank the person out of the symbiote highlight the danger, horror, and desperation of the alien takeover. The main issue we have is that this stretch of the game doesn't allow these moments to have enough staying power, favoring instead to rush through them like it's trying to cram as many Venom references from the comics as possible. MJ becoming Scream and the dedicated boss for her is just a footnote compared to the other insane shit that happens, like Miles and Martin Lee burying the hatchet as they go into Peter's mind, and Peter subsequently becoming anti-Venom. Look, he's got the McFarlane eyes, dude!
This breakneck pace towards the finish line gets more jarring when after Venom steals the space rock, immediately the city gets super infected with the symbiote. Listen, I love Web of Shadows as much as the next guy, but even in that game there was a solid half of the game dedicated to building up Venom taking over New York. If you're going to do this big thing, at least let it sit for a minute. Regardless, after Venom steals Rock, Peter and Miles— Oh my god! Oh, that suit looks real bad!
What?
Real talk, this new canon suit is fine. I like its color scheme and the spider logo, but we need to talk about those shoes. They don't mesh with the overall outfit very well and are clearly just there because of a brand deal with Adidas in the future. Okay, quick update. Turns out you can actually buy Miles' new costume on Adidas if you're like a member or something, and I get that Peter has like 3 or 4 different suits in this story while Miles just has the one, so of course he was eventually getting a new suit. But to debut it this haphazardly and out of nowhere is another contributing factor for the third act being rushed. This isn't an anti-Ock suit situation. That suit had a cutscene and tied into the story. This is just out of nowhere, and some story behind it would have been appreciated. You could have had Haley design it or something. It would have been that simple to set up and pay off. Hopefully in Spider-Man 3 or whatever the next game will be, they tweak the design.
And let's not forget that soon after, Miles is signing out Haley on a date while Peter is battling for his life against the equivalent of the Flood from Halo.
This final fight is something you can only do with video games, and Insomniac did the impossible. The sheer scale and insanity of what you see comes second to actually playing it. I have my gripes with the overall execution and pace, but shout out to Insomniac for going full throttle. If only Donny Cates was credited.
He's not! And still, the game ends with MJ starting a podcast, ripping off Danica, Peter dedicating his time to restarting the Emily May Foundation solo, and Miles taking on the responsibility of being the more prominent Spider-Man for a while. And then, the credits roll. Oh, and there's also some shit with Doc Ock at the end and Silk, but like, as reiterated before, everything before the symbiote was the best parts of the story for us, and everything after the symbiote's introduction felt lesser in comparison. That isn't to say that we overall dislike the entire narrative, and we apologize if it came off that way. Insomniac did a lot of things with the story they weren't obligated to do, and when it works, it really works! It's just a shame that what doesn't work really doesn't work, and results in an okay ending for an amazing, spectacular, sensational, ultimate, all-new, all-different, superior, spine-tingling, astonishing, and finally, good Spider-Man story.
Spider-Man 2 is an incredible game that unfortunately has a story that fizzles out. The gameplay improvements and additions are nothing short of incredible, and the side stories, while I wish were given a tad bit differently for post-game reasons, are peak Spider-Man writing and a blast to go through. Our problems with the game are mostly trivial and don't devalue an already amazing experience. Once again, to creative director Brian Intihar and the rest of the Spider-Man team over at Insomniac, thank you.
However, an unbalanced game deserves an unbalanced review, and while I don't know if we've reached that yet, I can think of one way to cement this as truly the most unbalanced Spider-Man 2 review of all time. Danica's podcast is just kind of there and doesn't really do much. I missed the social media tab.
Why can't we replay podcasts?
The final reward you get for doing the last EMF mission being in just another comic book suit is kinda lame.
Not being able to change the time of day when you beat the story, but being able to change the act music is weird.
Why can't we respawn crime and replay missions like we could in Spider-Man Miles Morales?
There's no way to get the Black Symbiote tendrils back post-game.
Where the heck do the spider arms go when they retract?
Without the slam upgrade, Miles' new electric uppercut sucks.
Battle damage not going away if you got really messed up in combat is a little annoying.
Boat crimes.
Where's the selfie camera in photo mode? I want to take selfies with my homies.
Why can't we do character poses with the web wings? Seriously?
The Avengers and Fantastic Four are the worst superhero teams in this universe, but both of them didn't show up once the city got covered in black goo. You have so many movie suits for Peter, but the best you could do for his Spider-Verse suits was Noir.
Kraven didn't kill Screwball? We're just gonna leave her there? Why can't I get a slice? You're telling me you made a bike riding mechanic for only 3 missions and 2 of them are optional?
How the heck did Peter and Miles install 3D printers into their web shooters? That sounds like a real stretch in terms of science.
I want to replay bases.
Why is there no New Game Plus?
So yeah, overall 8, 9 out of 10 best Spider-Man game ever. See ya!